When you have a group of heroes that are as ancient as the Eternals, there is a lot to know and lots to talk about. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. We went over some key points and facts in regards to Marvel's superhero team of myth and legend, the Eternals, on part 1 of this list. And now we are back with even more facts for you, because, well, there is a lot to know. The Eternals, after all, have been around in Marvel Comics since 1976, and in terms of in-canon history, are an ancient subspecies of humans created by the influence and experimentation of the Celestials, and have been around since the prehistoric period. Join me as we learn even more about this powerful and historical crew of supers as we count down our top 10 Eternal facts you need to know, part 2. And if you missed part 1, be sure to give that video a watch as well. But for now, let's get counting. Number 10, Chariots of the Gods. Last time, we talked about the connection between the New Gods and the Eternals when it came to godlike superhero teams with mythological and yet cosmic inspirational ties. This time, we are going to talk about where some of those inspirations may have come from, other than the obvious sources of myth and lore belonging to ancient history. Chariot of the Gods is a book from 1968 by German author Erich von Däniken. It's believed to have inspired Jack Kirby somewhat in regards to his creation of the Eternals. The book explores and offers the theory that our greatest technologies and religious beliefs could have actually come from ancient aliens who visited our planet. This theory is still around today and fits with Kirby's exploration and fiction of how aliens from another world could have influenced the creation of our gods, heroes of myth, and even our history. Number 9. Who's Who in the MCU? We talked a little bit about some of the characters who are part of the cosmically superpowered hero group in the comics, but just which Eternals will be appearing in the film? Who will be playing them? And what differences do we know about when it comes to that MCU version of these characters? Gemma Chan, who previously played Minerva in Captain Marvel, will appear again in the MCU, but this time more prominently as Eternal Cersei. Angelina Jolie is playing Athena, one of the leaders of the Eternals, daughter of Zuras, and assumed to be Greek goddess Athena. Richard Madden is another known Eternals leader from the comics, Icarus. Madden is well known for his portrayal of Robb Stark on Game of Thrones. Kumail Nanjiani is Kingo, initially a samurai warrior turned action film star in the comics, whose character has been altered slightly for the MCU. Kingo, however, will still be a fame-obsessed film star, but well known for his Bollywood film roles instead. Lauren Ridolph will be playing Makkari. In the comics, Makkari was originally male, but the MCU version will be female and is also the first confirmed deaf superhero in the MCU. Super cool. Some people still speculate, of course, that Hawkeye is at least partially deaf, but I don't think that's been confirmed in the MCU yet. Brian Tyree Henry is Phastos, who will be the first superhero to be depicted as openly gay in the MCU. Selma Hayek will be Ajak. Ajak is another character who was originally portrayed as male in the comics, but whose MCU version will be female. Leah McHugh is Sprite, often the most mischievous member of the Eternals. Don Lee is Gilgamesh, who will become quite close with Thena in the film. And the often more villainous Druig will be played by Barry Kogan. And friends, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about the Eternals, be sure to show us by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Marvel Max Comics. Yep, the Eternals had their own explicit Marvel Max series, if you can imagine that. This came to pass in 2003 and was not really tied at all to anything Jack Kirby had created, except that the Eternals appeared to be another race of beings and they were still called the Eternals. There were also still deviants involved, but that's about it. It was hypersexual and violent and about as weird as you could imagine. Maybe even weirder. This version of the Eternals only lasted 6 issues, thank goodness. It was not well received, but fortunately we would get a well-received reboot of the main continuity Eternal series after it in 2006. Number 7, Eternals Volume 3, 2006. Now let's talk about this amazing series. The 3rd volume of Eternals is a 7-issue limited series brought to us by Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr. It starts off in a very Gaiman mythological fashion, with the Eternals living among humans, seemingly unaware of their powers or their past. Over time, they would come to remember who they were, and it would be revealed of how and why they had forgotten. The covers from the series are also stunning and were done by Rick Barry. When others talk about Cersei, or when I talk about her myself, issue number 2's cover from this series featuring her is always the first image that comes to my mind. It's just really iconic. And if you've ever watched anything else where people have talked about Cersei, you've probably seen this cover before. These covers are real pretty. Number 6. 100! 100 seems to be the magical number, at least that was what was established in the newest Eternal series. On the title page of issue number 1 of the current series, it is written that the Celestials, upon coming to Earth, created 100 Eternals and 100 Deviants before they left our planet. Likely to make Eternals elsewhere in the cosmos, or go do, well, whatever it is that Celestials feel they need to do when they're not making Eternals or Deviants. Of those 100 Eternals, not all of them are from one area. In fact, they are divided up into kind of regions or factions depending on where they're from or where they are based on Earth, or depending on other Eternals that they find they align with. They tend to congregate. I don't know what that was. Me trying to find the word congregate. Number 5, the generations. Another way to divide the Eternals is generationally, as not all of them are actually the original Eternals. In fact, many of the main Eternal characters that we are familiar with are actually the offspring of other Eternals. Some Eternals are 2nd or 3rd generation, whereas others are as young as 5th generation. There are those who are born before the fall of Titanos, who are considered 1st generation, those who were around for Cronus' experiment, presumably born well before it I assume, who we consider 2nd generation. 3rd generation are those born after the experiment. 4th generation were born after what is referred to as the coming of the 2nd host, and finally there are those that were born after the coming of the 3rd host, which are considered the 5th generation of Eternals. 5 generations. I don't know why, but now I'm imagining like the Eternals is like a sitcom, like Full House. It's like all these 5 generations of Eternals trying to coexist in one house. I don't know why I imagine that, but here we are. Number 4, Unimind. When the Eternals get together, they create an entity known as the Unimind. Initially, the Unimind was shown as a genderless being of basically pure energy, who only the leader of the Eternals could bring forth. However, later on, we learned that the Unimind could also be summoned forth when the Eternals were together. I think the minimum you need is 4, which is an oddly specific number, but here we are. And apparently they could do this even if they weren't aware of their true existence as Eternals. This happened while they were living in human form and had been made to forget their true heritage. So we're talking Eternals Volume 3, starts around issue 2, I believe. But we also see the effects of it in issues 3 and 4. The emergence of the Unimind in this instance also helped to reawaken their abilities, reminding them of who they were. Number 3, Olympia. Olympia is the home of the Eternals. It has existed in a few different places on Earth, but is generally located in Greece on the Mount Olympus, but is also often shown as being hidden away there, sometimes subterraneously. Usually it's like you drop down into it. I should clarify actually after that explanation of there being 100 Eternals that the Celestials made, that the Olympian Eternals are generally the ones who call Olympia their home. Makes sense, yeah? This is the futuristic, metallic, and technology-based kind of looking headquarters for the Eternals of Olympia, which is also like what that group is called. Makes sense, because yeah, their home base is Olympia. Often when the Eternals are resurrected, this is where they first awaken again, alive once more, reborn. Number 2, the Avengers. The Eternals and the Avengers are both hero groups, but more than that, they are also both allies to one another and even friends. Some members of the Eternals have even teamed up with or been a member of the Avengers. In fact, both Cersei and Gilgamesh each served on the Avengers team at one point. Cersei ended up being offered membership to the Avengers after befriending Captain America. Gilgamesh joined the Avengers for a short time after Captain America had lost his mantle temporarily to US Agent. Although his time on the team was quite brief, he's still believed to be one of the all-time strongest heroes to have served on the Avengers team. Because Gilgamesh, he's a real strong. Too bad he couldn't stay because he was an exiled Eternal. Number 1, main MCU characters. If you're wondering just which Eternals you should be reading up on in preparation for the film, it's been said that Ikaris and Cersei are intended to be the main characters of the first Eternals movie. So those are likely the ones you'll want to be well versed in. Cersei appears frequently in the first volume of Avengers, starting in issue 308, and appearing on and off till about issue 375. She also is in much of the first and second volume of Eternals. Ikaris appears in all 5 volumes of the Eternals pretty frequently, so you could even start with the newest volume, which started near the beginning of this year, 2021. Ikaris also appears teaming up with the Eternals in Thor in volume 1 of Thor, starting in issue 285 and appearing almost consistently until issue 292. What are some of your favorite Eternal facts? What do you want to know about this amazing group of heroes? Are there any specific Eternals that you would love to see us explore on this channel? maybe get their own list? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I am your host, Amanda McKnight. Till next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.